It says we are live.
Well, I am.
Aha, good. I woke up this morning, and poor, our guest today has had, we've had technical problems in the past. I woke up this morning, went to StreamYard, and it said, you have no broadcasts planned. I was like,
oh no, not John Beland again.
Not again. Oh, my Lord. So can you see us up there, Martz?
Yeah.
You can.
Yes, we are live.
Jolly good.
Okay.
I'm going to go to comments.
Let's do it.
Lovely, lovely. So our guest today, we've already given it away. We've said John Beland. He is an American songwriter, musician, and producer whose career bridges the worlds of country, rock, and Americana. Known for his literate songwriting and studio craft, John has worked with a wide circle, and I do mean wide, and we'll get into it, of influential artists, including Kris Kristofferson, Linda Ronstadt, Ricky Nelson, and many, many more, and other key figures from the California country rock and Nashville songwriting scenes. As a writer and collaborator, Beland developed a reputation for songs rooted in strong narrative, emotional realism, and melodic clarity. Qualities that have made his work a natural fit for artists who value storytelling as much as sound. His music reflects the lineage of classic American songwriting, drawing from folk, country, and rock traditions, whilst remaining contemporary in tone. Beyond songwriting, Beland has been active as a producer and studio musician, contributing to recordings which emphasize authenticity and craftsmanship. His behind-the-scenes work has placed him in creative environments alongside some of the most respected voices in American music, particularly during the era when Nashville and Los Angeles artists were increasingly crossing stylistic boundaries. As an author and commentator, and we'll dig into some, this is the best read if you're going on, even if you're not going on a plane, get this for the house, it's so good. As an author and commentator on music and creativity, John brings a songwriter's perspective to the cultural history of American popular music, offering insight into the collaborative process, the evolution of the industry, the enduring power of well-told songs, and how to fly a burrito. Welcome, John Beland.
Hello, John.
This guy sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
he is.
I'd love to meet him.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy that book this afternoon.
Absolutely.
There's another book as well, isn't there?
There's two of them, yeah. So he has Best Seat in the House and Pass the Guitar, and I'll tell you a story. Yeah. But
well, hello, ladies. Don't you look beautiful?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice to see you both.
The woman at Ross Dress for Less thinks I've got multiple personality disorder because I always buy two of the same blouse.
Well, how have you been? It's been a long time.
Great. And how have you been? What have you been up to? Well, let's start with let's go wind the clock back before we'll get to what are you up to now. So please tell the folks about how you got started in the music business and your first trip from hometown Illinois to La La Land, hanging out in Hollywood and Vine. And did you really only have $5 on a cassette tape? Where the hell did you sleep?
Yeah, that's really true. I didn't have a cassette tape because they didn't have cassettes back then. I had a reel-to-reel. I actually, I lived in hometown Illinois, which is southwest of Chicago. And we left when I was about 16, and I had already been playing guitar for a couple of years before that. So my dad got a job offer in California, and as you can see on the news with the ice and the snow and the horrible, so every year we had to deal with that. So it didn't take much arm bending to get my dad to pack us in the car and get out to California, you know.
Yeah.
I hated it when we got here in '67. I just was homesick. I had a girlfriend, I had a band back in Illinois, and but I also had these songs in my head, and so I literally had like about a $15-20 guitar that I took with me on the trip, and I made this tape in the bathroom, you know, of me singing these horrible great tunes but horrible singing, and it was on I borrowed the tape recorder from the audio-visual department of La Puente High School, and just in case they're watching this and they're still looking for it, you know. But I took the tape, and the next morning I didn't tell my parents. Obviously, I was supposed to be going to continuation school because I got expelled for truancy, and instead of going to school, my dad dropped me off out in front of the school, and I took off to Hollywood, and I stayed there, and I pretty much lived on the streets for about a week and a half, 2 weeks before somebody saw me playing at the Troubadour on an open mic night and took me in literally. And that's how I got started.
How would you go about getting on the stage at the Troubadour? Were they really truly open mic? You could just walk out, fill out a form, and apply.
Well, to get on the open mic night was a bit tricky because everybody wanted naturally to get on it.
Oh yeah.
But they only picked about the first, I think, like 12 people, and you had to wait out in line out on the at the ticket where the ticket office is. You had to wait there literally for 5-6 hours.
Oh,
Everybody was waiting to get in there, and so people would sit on the curb and play guitar and sing songs outside. And then it cost you, I think it cost like $1 or $2 to get in, and and you were allowed at about I think about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Wow. And I got in there, and that's what I started to do. I started offering my guitar services to other artists that maybe needed accompaniment.
I see.
And this caught the eye of Larry Murray, the singer-songwriter who was emceeing the Hoots. He took a liking to me and started putting me on stage at key times in the night when he knew that there was an A&R guy or a publisher in the house, And, eventually I got discovered by a duo called the Daltons, and Dan and Lois Dalton. And they were a production team formerly from the Back Porch Majority group. And they had started their own independent production thing. And they were producing commercials and TV themes, and they had a rock group called the Peppermint Trolley Company, who had a local hit. Yeah. And so they started their own production company, and they literally took me in off the street and called my mom and dad and told them that where I was. And my mom and dad had to drive into Hollywood. To them, Hollywood. I'm laughing because for me to be in Hollywood when only a couple months earlier I was in hometown Illinois is boggling,
Yeah.
But my folks were relieved for one thing that somebody found me because they had the police out looking for me, and then Dan told my parents, we can give you could take John with you right now and take him back home. But he's just going to run away and come back, or we can see that this is what he wants to do, for the rest of his life. And if you let us take care of him, let him stay with us, we'll use him in the studio, running errands and maybe eventually playing a little guitar. And my mom and dad said, yeah, great, take him. And
it's yours.
They had 5 other kids to worry about, Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I stayed with the Daltons, and as luck would have it, within the year, I had my Engelbert Humperdinck recorded my first song, and I got signed to Randwood Records, and then I got the job singing on the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour, and then the Brady Bunch theme song. So it was a good first year,
Wow.
And then from there, I met other people, along the line, Linda Ronstadt.
So Small World Show with Schwartz created the Brady Bunch, right?
Well, the thing that stands out about singing it was the fact that I was going to make $250. And I was 17, single, and these were $250, 1967 dollars.
Fortune, wasn't it, in those days?
Windfall for me. I got my first apartment from that, and I never saw the show.
Didn't you?
It just wasn't my cup of tea. I was a bit older from another generation.
Yeah.
But years and years later, I was recording in my home studio in Nashville, and my daughter came in with 2 of her friends, and I was right in the middle of recording, and I said, what do you guys want? I'm really busy. And my daughter said, I want you to tell him, Dad, tell him the truth. And I said, well, tell him what, She said, tell him you sang on the Brady Bunch, So I said, yeah, I sang on the Brady Bunch. And my daughter looked at the 2 friends and went, gave a big C, I told you, It was real popular because a movie had come out, which Shelley Long, and
yes.
But that's how I got started, and I started playing for a lot of people that year, playing on sessions, and it was a good start.
Yeah. How did you first meet Kris Kristofferson? Was that at the Troubadour?
Yeah, in 1970 on a Monday night hootenanny, Larry Murray came up to me and he said, he said, I got a friend who's staying with Literate and I. Literate was his partner, and he's from Nashville, and he's a damn good songwriter, but he doesn't play very good guitar. And so, you want to back him up, and back then I would back up the devil just to get 15 minutes on the stage because, waiting for somebody to discover you. So he took me up the stairs to meet his friend, and his friend was in the opening act dressing room, which was about the size of a closet, at the Troubadour. And there he was. He was in these suede pants and kind of beat up boots, and he was clean shaven, kind of long hair, and very, very humble and very apologetic. He kept apologizing, I remember, all the time for being not the greatest guitar player. And then I sat down with him to work these songs out that I had never heard before.
Right. And
he played me For the Good Times and Sunday Morning Coming Down, me and Bobby McGee. Nobody had really ever heard these songs before. And Larry brought us on stage, and nobody applauded. I mean, he was I don't know how to say it. I guess he was an acquired taste for the Troubadour crowd.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a few weeks, and later on, about a year later, when he started getting some film, I backed him up again. But now there was a buzz going around Hollywood the second time about Kris from the movies he had been making. So this time he was the opening act for Linda Ronstadt in 1970, and I was with Linda now playing guitar. So I told Kris, I said, listen, Kris didn't have a guitar player. He had two players playing with him on stage, Billy Swan, who would later go on to record I Can Help, and Dennis Lindy, who would later go on to write Burnin' Love for Elvis. Wow. That was his band. That was him and his two buddies. He had no lead player. So I told Kris, I said, well, I'm here playing with Linda and she's paying me, and what the hell, I'll back you up if you want. He went, great. So I backed him up that week at the Troubadour, and I also played with Linda a couple minutes later, and and it was really incredible because one night, this is just unbelievable. One night, now you got to remember, I'm 20 years old, everything's wonder, and Kris says to me, he says, he says, I have a friend coming up, and he's going to sing. You guys back him up. And I said, well, who is he? He says, you'll see, And okay, right. So I'm on stage and I got my guitar, and Kris says, all right, we're going to bring a friend of mine up from Nashville, one of my best friends, and I love this guy. Give a round of applause for Johnny Cash.
Oh my Lord!
Oh boy!
Boom, up on the stage jumps Johnny Cash, and to me, he's like 50 feet tall.
Oh,
yeah. And he's like Paul Bunyan, and the Troubadour stage is pretty intimate when you're up there with more than three people, So he's right next to me, and the place, and you can imagine in 1970, the Troubadour is going crazy. It's like A-bomb went off, and they're whooping and hollering, and we did Folsom Prison Blues, and we're playing the song, and people are screaming and yelling, and the room is spinning around, and it comes time for the lead solo. And if you're familiar with Johnny, his lead player was I got a mental block, but his first lead player was the guy who invented that boom 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 sound. Luther Perkins.
Oh yes, of course.
Luther had died the year before. So anyway, the lead solo is coming up. The place is going crazy. People are up and just jumping and he turns to me for the solo, and he puts his nose right on my nose, just literally on my nose, and he looks at me with the eye, and he goes, "Pick it, Luther." And I went, no, and I knew the guitar solo, and I went, and that place is going. And finally, he leaves. He gets finished, he leaves, and we get back to Kris's show. The end of the night, I'm at the stairwell at the Troubadour, and the house lights are on, and they're sweeping the floors. And this girl comes up to me, this beautiful blonde girl comes up to me. She's just gorgeous. She gives me a big kiss on the stairwell, and she says, "You guys were just great." And she gives me this big kiss, and I'm kind of in the clouds, and I look up, and there's Kris at the top of the stairs looking down at me, and he says, He says, well, you finally made it in Hollywood, Beland. And I said, what do you mean? He says, that was Faye Dunaway. Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so naturally, I ran out looking for her as if I had a chance to go out with Faye Dunaway. And the nicest thing about that whole week's run was at the end of the night, he stopped me in the stairway and he wanted to pay me for playing with him. And I said, Kris, I'm getting paid. I think I made back then with Linda $150 a week, and that was good. And I said, Kris, Linda's already paid me. Don't you have to pay me? He says, no. He says, take this money and and later, if I become something like a living legend or something, I'll hire you back for bigger money. So he paid me $35.
For the
And
weekend.
2 years later, I was playing guitar for him, and I was making a lot more than than that. We were by that time. The third time I went with him, we were playing Coliseums and stuff. And,
Right.
Wow.
I've only ever heard great things about Kristofferson.
Yeah.
he was the sweetest guy in the world, and I was with him during that really strange time when it was very similar to the movie Star is Born. Chris was battling with drinking and crazy friends, and some of the gigs we did were right out of the movie. And but he was at the bottom line was he was a humble, sweet guy who would do anything for his friends, and I loved him.
Yeah.
I had a great time working with him. He was fantastic.
That's wild.
Now, didn't you help Linda Ronstadt form her first band?
Oh, get the guys together.
Yeah, Swamp Water. We were a self-contained 4-piece Cajun rock group, and but we kind of formed after we joined Linda, and Linda was just breaking up from the Stone Ponies, and she had come out with Long Time, I think, and she wanted to put this band together, and she had already picked these two guys from up in Palmdale, and then I had known Linda. I had actually met Linda on a blind date. We were set up on a date over at Henry Diltz's house.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
72.
We were back then. It was just like those Jack Webb hippie movies. It was so corny. We're all sitting around in a circle playing guitar and passing the guitar. Smoking dope and that's when I first met Linda, and she asked me if I wanted to join her, and play guitar for her. And I had a commitment at the time, but about 6 months later, I broke the commitment and came to work for her. And she's a dear friend, and I love her to death. And I was with her at a time with most of these acts. I was with them at a time when they were just breaking on the scene. So that electricity, every gig got better and better and better as they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the same applied with Linda. It was really exciting to go from little coffee houses to playing the Monterey Pop Festival,
Yes,
and she was a sweetie pie. I love her, and I think about her all the time.
So what a voice! I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
our regular viewers and fans will know I'm the fan of the clear as a bell voice. Anne Murray, Karen Carpenter, Linda Ronstadt. People who don't worry it like a freaking sheepdog. Who actually just sing the notes.
Natural, yeah. I mean, nobody could follow Linda. She, we only had like two guitars, a bass, and drums, 4 pieces, and we didn't even have a piano player, and we would go out and open for, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Johnny Winter, acts that had tons of equipment, and we would show up with our little amps. We look like an episode from the Monkees, and so we would, but when we would play, nobody could follow Linda. She just blew a hole in every audience that she performed in.
She just didn't need all the frip frap and whatever. It was just pure music.
And nobody was playing those songs. Those songs were all like, most of her repertoire were country standards.
Our friend Ray Kahn, who's also a musician and producer, he's asking, are you still playing gigs or doing sessions?
No, I'm not. I'm not really. Occasionally one will come in and everything, but I've been working on my 3rd book, and
good.
And that's been pretty neat. And I moved out here to Pebble Beach, and I have my studio and my guitars, and once in a while, I'll go down to the wineries in Napa or in Santa Rosa and play there. And but it's instrumental guitar music, and I really like it. It's less. It beats being on a bus. I'm glad I'm off the bus.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Elizabeth in freezing cold Pennsylvania is asking, did you ever meet or party with Jerry Garcia? Was he part of, he was more Northern California, right?
Yeah. I never, we had this kind of rivalry in LA at the time back in 69. We thought we were elite. We were the LA session guys that played on all of the, artsy-fartsy stuff. And we always kind of like looked down and boo-hooed the San Francisco scene.
Yeah.
Which was really, the wrong thing to do because there were some exceptional players that came out of there. But I never got to meet, out of everybody I've worked with, I never got to meet Jerry Garcia. And later in life, I became a big admirer of his playing.
Yeah.
Right. I think in those days, with the Haight-Ashbury and the Summer of Love and the hippies and everything, I think the Northern California music scene was a lot more prog rock, they would call it, that kind of thing. And then LA was still very organic up in the canyons, up in Topanga Canyon and Laurel Canyon, and very kind of hug a tree, more
very much so.
Dippy, right?
Very much so. We went, one of my first gigs with Linda was playing the Fillmore West. We were the opening act for the Byrds.
Oh, wow.
And, Clarence White and Roger and all those guys. And I'll never forget it because we thought we were really cool. We were really the elite. And
You were too.
Really hip guys, and now we're playing at the Fillmore West. So I'm behind the curtain, and we're getting ready to play, and the curtain going up, and I look out in the audience, and everybody is stoned and whacked out of it, and the whole audience, again, it's like a Jack Webb Dragnet episode. The audience, they're all doing and I've never played in front of people doing that before. The girls had painted faces, and we look like we look like if Gomer Pyle had a group. Because we were so straight, and we realized that we on our way back home we realized we weren't very straight. We didn't know anything.
That's
we
really
played the Fillmore and they loved Linda. Everybody.
How did you meet up with Ricky Nelson?
Yeah, when did your whole Nashville world start? Because Ricky was in Beverly Hills then, right? When the twins.
Ricky lived in Laurel Canyon, and
right.
He had a beautiful farmhouse out there. Ricky Nelson was one of my big heroes when I was living in hometown when I was like 14, 13. And I bought all of his records because I was enthralled by the guitars on his record. I didn't know James Burton personally, of course, I was only 13. Right. But I used to copy those guitar things, licks off the record like Religion. And then all of a sudden I end up in California. I end up in Hollywood. And one of the first people I met was Ricky. I met him at Nathan's Hot Dogs in the Valley. And he was sitting there with his kids. And I introduced myself to him. Well, about 7 years later, I ended up playing guitar for him. And then I had a very close relationship with Rick. I was a little bit more than just playing guitar for him. I was involved with him in his later recordings, and and I knew his records. Sometimes better than he did. And
it's funny, isn't it, how he really had with. After all the Hello, Mary Lou and whatever, and the twins, Matthew and Gunnar, are still out with a show called Ricky Nelson Remembered that they stuff. And then all of a sudden he does this kind of 180 with Garden Party, didn't he? He just completely.
Yeah, he did. He made his debut with the Stone Canyon Band at the Troubadour, and he recorded a live. Yeah, and he recorded a live album there. At that time, his bass player was Randy Meisner, who would join the Eagles later. I was there for that night that Rick debuted at the Troubadour, and I was so excited to finally be able to see him play guitar. Wow, And I got there in the afternoon when they were setting up their equipment, and I kept thinking, wow, there's Ricky Nelson's guitar, and there's his amp, and this is so cool. And then I saw the show, and the show was good. It was different because he had kind of changed the arrangements on his hits to more country kind of sound. He had Tom Brumley playing steel guitar from Buck Owens' group was playing with him.
Wow.
And they were good, but they weren't the Ricky. If you're going there to hear Ricky Nelson stuff, from the '60s, it was different,
Yeah.
But when I got with him in '79, we went back to doing the old songs because everybody kept asking for them, and he had been kind of programmed by hang-arounders that would tell him that those old hits were corny and he needs to update his sound, all that bullshit,
Yeah.
And by the time I got with him, he was kind of like almost damaged goods, I mean, from trying to hang on to that country rock thing, which really wasn't working that great for Rick.
No.
And so we went back to getting rid of the steel guitar and getting into rockabilly, Telecaster, Ricky Nelson, rock and roll. And it was like day and night. His bookings like doubled, and we were always on the road. We did Saturday Night Live, and
That's right. Yes.
which was great. He hosted the show that week.
Wow.
And,
I got to go back and watch that.
Have to find that. Yeah.
It was a rush. It was 1979. It was the last year of the original cast.
Oh.
And Rick was the host that week, and so we were there. We were hanging out with those crazy people. We were hanging out with them for a week in New York.
Sure.
And it was a fasten your seatbelt week, And,
I bet.
No kidding. So that would have been Gilda Radner and Chevy Chase and.
yeah, no, Chevy Chase was gone. Chevy Chase left after the first year of SNL.
That's right.
but it was Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and
Wow. Belushi?
the original, Belushi. Yeah, he was there. He was, and I met him in the hallway one time. He was, I couldn't believe that he was going to make it to the airtime because he was so screwed up. He was
out.
What a shame.
Yeah, he was in bad shape, and but come airtime, boom, he got on stage and he was funny as could be.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That was Rick, and so that was the time working with Rick was probably my most favorite time in my career because he was such a great guy. His family were great people.
Right.
His music was great. I had a lot of input into his later recordings. And he was my idol when I was 12 years old. So
That's wonderful.
This was all still in LA. They hadn't made the Nashville move yet.
Yeah, well, he never moved to Nashville. He had never recorded away from Hollywood until we did. He and I flew to Memphis and did an album called the Memphis Sessions, and I had an arrangement, kind of a James Taylor arrangement for the Bobby Darin song "Dream Lover."
Yeah.
And I played it for Rick one day, and he said, "Wow," he said, let's work on that." And that was Rick's last chart record was "Dream Lover," and we did that on the Saturday Night Live. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. He was really funny, and he knew a lot about music and a lot about guitar, and he was really a good guitar player.
Yeah.
And he was just the greatest. That's all I can say about Rick.
Yeah, and a lot of his music went up in flames in Universal, didn't it? Along with his parents, with Ozzie and Harriet's original celluloid film of their TV shows, when they had that terrible backlot fire in Universal.
Yeah.
The fact that and also a lot of the Nelson, the twins, Matthew and Gunner's masters, they were on Universal, I guess, publishing or records. Can you imagine 3 generations of family losing all their art in one fire?
It was a terrible.
Mind-blowing.
The funny thing is, the twins' first recording session was a surprise that Rick and I put together. We were recording in this. Rick and I were recording in this little studio in the valley, and it was a twins' birthday, and so we wanted to surprise them by giving at that time the twins played. One played drums, the other played bass guitar. So whenever I go to Ricky's house, the kids would drag me in the barn to play guitar with them, And so finally we said, well, let's really surprise him and give him the first recording session. So we got the studio out in the valley, and we got the road crew. Rick's road crew went in and snuck all of the twins' music equipment and set it up in the studio. And Kris told, there we go. That's it. That's behind the board there at the studio. And Kris told the kids that they were going to the dentist, and they were all bummed out. And she drove them to this little room, the studio we had, and they walked through the door and they saw that they were in a recording studio, and they saw their equipment set up and my amp in there too with them because I play guitar. And we recorded 2 songs with them, their first 2 songs. And the funny thing about that is that we wanted to get some background vocals on it, to kind of support. So Rick went out and got the Pointer Sisters.
Oh,
It was almost like an episode of Ozzie and Harriet. Harriet was there, by the way. But it was really funny because, you're seeing Rick go by and going, "Hi, Mom. Hi, Rick. Hi, Dave. Hey, Rick. Oh, here come the Pointer Sisters. Oh, come on in."
Oh, yeah, like
just like that.
like you do,
Yeah, that was our first recording session, and
they're incredibly accomplished musicians. They live in Nashville now, in Franklin, actually. And
they're great kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I got to play with them in 2003 or 2002. They brought me out with them on a Princess cruise line.
Those rock and roll cruises.
So they thought they'd bring their dad's guitar player out with them, so they got me. And I'm definitely a non boat, ocean kind of guy. I look at a glass of water, I get seasick.
Oh boy!
And I told them, I said, "Listen, I don't want to do this because I get seasick real easy." And so they said, "No problem. Everything will be cool, John. Don't worry about it." And so they gave me all these patches to put on my body when we get out there in the ocean. I'm out there with the Nelsons. We get out there, and what happens? A hurricane hits.
Oh shit!
Oh, God.
The boat goes up and down like the Titanic.
Oh.
I'm looking at the little picture in my cabin of the mezzanine, and it's on an angle. It's going like that.
Oh.
And so that was it was.
Not the happiest.
I told you, nostalgia is over with, boys. I'm not coming back here and doing these anymore.
Crazy.
Much younger, they could take it.
Our friend Ashley in Alabama is asking, did you ever work with Graham Parsons by any chance? Or
I didn't work with him, but I knew him real well, and I worked really closely with the other guys in the Byrds, Clarence White, and I worked with Roger. And but I met Graham a couple times. Both times he was just out there. I didn't record with him, but I went to the studio there to watch him, and he was a real quiet, gentle kind of guy, I remember. And they introduced me to him at the studio. Clarence had brought me to the studio to watch them record, and I was in the booth, and I wasn't on the session. I was just observing, and so they do the session at Sunset Sound. They do the session, and all night long, and the sun's coming up. They're packing up. Everybody's getting ready to go home, and Clarence introduces me to Graham, and he says, "Hey, Clarence, this is John. He's playing with Linda," And Graham looks at me, and he throws his arms around me and a locked embrace, and he looks at me and he said, "Brother, you picked your ass off tonight." And I wasn't even playing on the session. I was in the booth, and. I didn't know what to say. Clarence kind of nodded, like, just say yes, thank you. And, but he was a character. He
was a good friend of Pamela Des Barres, the
sure, absolutely,
the writer, and in fact, his daughter Polly Parsons is Pamela's erstwhile assistant, and Pamela Des Barres is her godmother. So, and the circle closes,
You're right. Everything kind of crisscrosses.
It does. Just
the troubadour crowd and the Palomino crowd, all of that.
Palomino, North Hollywood.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
First time I ever did line dancing.
Did you really at the Palomino Club?
Yeah.
Well, I want to see where's the video of that?
Yeah, nobody had video.
No.
So how did your whole Nashville chapter begin, which is where we met you? We hired you to record and produce a jingle for the Nashville Banner newspaper for good.
Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Good News Just Got Better that Martin wrote, and I think it was Brian Cadd, our Aussie hero friend, who introduced me to you. And he came through Errol Sober, who is a music publisher.
There's Brian right now. There he is right there.
There he is. Exactly. There he is right now.
Looks just like him, doesn't it?
It sure
anyway.
does. So
hold
how did your Nashville how
Yeah.
did your Nashville world start?
How did that start?
Yeah.
Well, it started, surprisingly, it started with Linda in 1970. I don't
Right.
know what's beeping there.
Is it your fax machine that
Calling
you
you
were telling us about?
from
That's
the
so
other
funny.
side. Yeah.
That's
I
so
turned
funny.
it's off. Okay.
That's okay.
My Nashville experience started in 1970 with Linda when we went out to Nashville to do the Johnny Cash show. And this was really a special show. It was live at the Ryman Auditorium. This is a special two-part Johnny Cash show. And check this out. Here's who the guests were. It was Linda, Neil Young, James Taylor, Tony Joe White, Albert Brooks, and Earl Scruggs, his first appearance since breaking up with Lester Flatt. And it was there in the audience, instead of the usual, audience, he brought on all the students from Vanderbilt University.
Oh, great.
So the Opry, and it was at the old Opry, the Ryman, with the balcony.
Yeah.
Oh, and anyway, so we came in for that. And while we were there, Swamp Water, my group, got to record with Earl Scruggs, and we had dinner at his house. And we, that was the first time. And then I came back to Nashville 2 years later with Johnny Tillotson, and I started doing recording sessions on his records for CBS, and which was really unique because back then they really didn't bring in outsiders to join their session units. They were a set session team, and for some reason his producer Billy Sherrill liked my guitar playing, and so I got to play with with Pete Drake and Pig Robbins and Ray Eddington, Jimmy Katz, all those guys that were legendary Nashville music road legends. Yeah. And then I kept going back and forth doing sessions all through the 70s in Nashville. And finally in 1980, when I joined the Burritos, we just said, screw it, let's just move there. So we did. We physically moved to Nashville in 1981, and I stayed there until 2000.
Oh, wow. Nearly 20 years. We were only there just a little over 3 years, but we loved it. We had a great time. After the Northridge earthquake took everything.
Wasn't it great? I mean,
it was great.
That Nashville that you remember and I remember doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
I bet.
But back then it was a real community of writers and producers, and an open door. It kind of was an open door policy. Anybody could walk in. You didn't have to make appointments or pay or get your car validated for parking. And it was Nashville was a really cool place. I really liked it. But in all my years in Nashville, I still always missed California. And as wacky as it is, and as crazy, and I've always felt a bond with LA and Nashville, and so I always wanted to go back. And every time I got ready to, a project came in, because I was very busy in that when I lived in Nashville, and I just finally said, "The heck with it! This time I mean it. I'm going to move," and I moved to Napa, not Yountville, California.
Yountville. Oh, pardon me, the French Laundry.
It was great. I loved it a lot. But I got to work with a lot of great people in Nashville. I had my songs recorded by a lot of great people. I got to work with Garth Brooks on Friends in Low Places, which was really an experience, because at the time we did it, none of us had any idea that, one thing, that Garth was going to do so good. Yeah. And that he was going to end, 1 minute, Garth pulls up to do the vocals he pulls up in his old beat up Jeep. And next thing I know, he's swinging from a wire in Madison Square Garden,
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
We used to, when we lived in Nashville, our bank branch was on, it was either 16th or 17th. It was the Music Row, I think First National or whatever it was called. It was the green, one with the green sign. And I pulled in one day to go and get petty cash for something we were doing. And Garth pulled up next to me in the parking lot in a navy blue, kind of beat up pickup truck, with like 2 burlap sacks in the back. And he goes to get one sack, and it's obviously heavy. And I'm like, oh, well, do you want me to stay? What do you do? So I said, let me get the door for you. And then I realized it's Garth Brooks. and he's dragging this sack and he dumps it in the lobby, and then he goes back out and gets this other sack in and dumps it, and then goes and sits at a table with a banker, and it's all cash from one of his concerts. He's all hauling his own cash in the back of a pick. I mean, somebody could have nicked it at a stoplight.
I tell you, is it funny? I mean, I'll tell you a really funny story, if I can, about Garth. Garth was our demo singer. I was the kind of the musical director for songwriter Dwayne Blackwell. Blackwell wrote I'm Friends in Low Places and I'm Mr. Blue. You remember that tune. I'm Mr. Blue. And anyway, he had this song that he wanted to do a demo on, and he was really believed in it. And he called me up and he said, I've got the song, come on into town and I'll play it for you, and let's set up a session for doing the demo. So I go into town and I go upstairs, and he plays this tune, Friends in Low Places, and I thought it was really a clever tune, and then he told me, he said, great, let's do the demo on it. And we set up time, and I said, well, who are you going to have to sing on it on the demo? And he says, well, he said, I got this friend of mine from Oklahoma to sing on the demo, and he told me who it was, and I said, Dwayne, there's our friend Tommy sings 10 times better than Garth, and Dwayne Blackwell said, I know, but Garth's going to get a deal, and my big phrase was one that Dwayne always reminded me. My reaction was, Dwayne. No radio station's going to play a record by a guy named Garth. So, and famous last words. And we did the original. We did the original demo on Friends in Low Places, which was just like the final record that came out.
Wow.
And Garth got paid $35 for it. Wow. And so we finished the demo, and Garth's going to record the tune, and all of a sudden he starts getting airplay, and I see him on TV, but he's still not really that well known. And one night I watched him on the Grand Ole Opry. Locally, we were able to get the Opry on TV, and Roy Acuff brought Garth on stage and said, I want to introduce you people to a brand new singer for Capitol EMI Records, Garth Brooks. And it was right there that I finally got what Dwayne saw. I went like, oh man, Garth's going to be huge. He's going to be huge, Yeah. So I'm all excited for him, and I run to the fax machine, and I fax a little note out to Garth's manager, Bob Doyle, and I went, Garth, I saw you on the Opry show. Man, you did it, buddy. You're going to be huge. Really pulling for you. Rock on, and JB, and send it out to him. About a couple of days later, I get an envelope in the mail. And I open it up, and it's from GB Enterprises,
Yep.
And it says, Dear Garth Brooks fan, although Mr. Brooks is busy and can't get to every fan letter, we invite you to join his fan club at $25. Yep. And I'm going, what? I got a form letter from Garth, So and I'm getting a little rub, So I sent a letter back to Bob Doyle again. I went, well, how come you sent me a fan letter? I thought you'd say, and he said, oh God, so he told Garth, and Garth was really embarrassed. And about a week later, I get another thing in the mail, and it's a big tube, and I pull out the poster that's in the tube, and it was a big poster of Garth with his guitar, and he had signed to John. I'm looking at the poster now. John, here's to the old days when only you would play my songs. And I've kept the poster, for all those.
Wow.
And he's getting a lot more now, I hear, than $35.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy, and I really loved working with him. Back then he was just a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, he was playing at the Boot Store, I guess, in the very beginning, and on Lower Broadway, and then obviously all of this happened. I met him when his manager was Pam Lewis. He had.
Sure. Yeah, Bob and Pam were.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
And she was married. She was married to a guy that actually lives locally here, and so that's how I met them. And
those were great days.
Yeah. And you would, you go to somebody's house for we were invited. I was doing a lot of background singing and session stuff. I wasn't getting $35. I was getting $20. But I met Kathy McDonald, who's Michael McDonald's sister.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, my brother, Michael's the biggest Beatles fan and whatever. And would you like to meet him?" I'm like, "A Doobie Brother? Are you kidding me?" And so it was his 50th birthday, and we all clubbed together and bought him a Wurlitzer, actual Wurlitzer, and filled it full of Doobie's music and all music of the era.
What a great gift.
Yeah, we had to go and scrape and find the old 45 vinyls and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He had a big part. He lives out on Barbecue Road, Dixon. Barbecue Road, Dixon, Tennessee.
Barbecue Road. Sounds like it's like the name of the song.
So we're all sitting there, and we go to his house for his 50th birthday, and he unveils the Wurlitzer and so on and so forth. And I don't know, he had to step out or something. It wasn't the days of cell phones, but he had to go do something for 10 minutes. He said, "I'll be back in 10 minutes." He probably went to get ice or something. And of course, Martin, my hubby, who's an amazing singer, he sits there and he's like, does anybody ever do the Michael McDonald impression around him? Oh. And Kathy's like, "Yeah, no, we don't do that. There's so many people." So Martin's had a couple of Budweisers, and he starts singing, "The whole world sings like Michael McDonald." And Michael had forgotten his car keys, and he was standing right behind him.
The Rich Little of country music. Get that.
Oh man, Martin's like right in the middle of his best McDonald impression, and he's like,
a friend of mine calls those moments UFMs, unidentified frozen moments.
Yes,
I like that.
My funniest Nashville story was when the Burritos became a duo at one point back in '81. We had about 5 hits for Curb Records, and so we were booked. Gib and I were booked to play the Grand Ole Opry. So this is great. This is a great break for us. So we go there, and we're waiting to. Our current single at the time was called "I'm Drinking Canada Dry," a real barroom tune. Yep. And so we go to the Opry. We get ready to go on, and Roy and. Jimmy Snow, the preacher, was the announcer, and I thought, this is pretty weird, but whatever. So he announces us. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's put your hands together for 2 new boys on the Curb Records, Gib and John, the Burrito Brothers." And we get up there and plug in, and as I'm walking to the mic, this is at the Ryman, or at the Grand Ole Opry. As I'm walking to the mic, I notice that behind me there's an organ player and people in robes and stuff, and I so while the people are applauding, I tell Gib, I whisper his ear, I said, "Turn around, take a look," And he looks around, he says, "Did we go through the wrong door or something?" And I said, "I don't know." So we get to the microphone, and I tell everybody, I said, "Well, thank you. It's good to be here, and we'd like to do our brand new single, and it's called 'I'm Drinking Canada Dry.' No applause." Okay. So we start playing it, and there's an organ playing behind us, and what the hell? And so we move into we do our next single. "Thank you very much. We'd like to do our single we out last year, and it was #1 in Nashville, and it's called 'Does She Wish She Was Single Again?'" And we do that, no applause. We say, "Thank you, good night." We walk off the stage. I could hear my boots squeaking as I'm walking off. I'm like, "What the hell happened?" And it was explained to me that the regular Grand Ole Opry radio show leaves the air at midnight and is replaced by the Grand Ole Opry gospel show. And we ended up there singing these cheating drinking songs to the gospel audience, And
boy.
We were never invited back to the Opry.
Oh, I wonder why.
Talk about fish out of water.
No kidding, And anyway.
Speaking of the flying burritos,
yes.
Did you introduce us to Brian Cadd?
The other way around. I just said, yeah. No,
yeah.
Brian introduced us to John because we were looking for a studio to record the Nashville band. Yeah. So how did you?
He's my best friend, and anything we could do together was fine with me. And so I asked him to join for one album, and we did a really great album together. It was "I Have a Hurricane," I think was the name of the album. And,
where did the name come from, and why flying?
The Burrito Brothers,
the
Flying Burrito Brothers, and nobody seems to know. I mean, Originally, it was started in 1969, and but I don't know who came up with the name or what. I knew all of the guys. By the time I joined in 1980, I had already known all the guys individually, so I was no stranger to the group. And I had the opportunity to join earlier than that too, but I really went into that group kicking and screaming because I was doing so well on my own.
Right.
That the last thing I wanted to do was hook up with 5 guys or 6 guys. And the Graham Parsons legend loomed largely over everything that we did. All the reviews would compare us to Graham Parsons, and I really got tired of it. And I wanted to change the name we were going to change the name to Golden West or the Gilbo Beland Band.
Huh.
And the record company wouldn't go along with it because they'd already had a couple hits as the Burrito Brothers.
Sure.
So, it was, I was in it for a long time. I did a lot of albums with the Burritos. I did get the neat thing about it. I did get to record while I was with the Burritos. I got to record with Buck Owens and Waylon Jennings.
Wow.
And Ricky Skaggs and Alison Krauss, and so
Incredible.
those moments were really good. But it wasn't the most wonderful time of my life,
Yeah.
But we're working with Ricky and working with writers in Nashville. That was really terrific for me.
Ashley's asking, do you keep in touch with Chris Hillman at all?
You know what, Chris and I went to a celebration of life ironically, for Larry Murray, who I brought up, who used to run the Hootenannies. He did a lot more than run that Hootenanny. He was the head writer for the Johnny Cash show, and he wrote a lot of hits for people, from the Byrds to the you name it. Anyway, Larry was one of my, he really was my big brother that I never had. And, he was responsible for most of the great stuff that happened for me, the opportunities. And I loved him, and he passed away. So I flew down to Burbank. This was like about 2 months ago, and Chris and Larry had been in a group back in the '60s, a bluegrass group. So I got to see Chris and Herb Peterson and a lot of the old gang from the Troubadour, and it was a bittersweet time.
Absolutely.
But I've known Chris for a long time. We just had never really hung out together, But,
Right.
No,
isn't it funny, on some of our shows, one of our author friends, David Bedford, has written a Beatle-themed book about what if Ivan Vaughan had never introduced John Lennon and Paul, and But isn't it funny, like, what if you hadn't run away from home and met with, all the people you met with, and then the Troubadour, and you got to get out the house and get it done, don't you?
Yeah, I think it was. When you're 17, you really have this bulletproof mentality, So you can never do that today. Be out on the streets for a week or 2 weeks, and the business is so different. But back then, it was still like those cartoons you watched on TV, where the guy runs off to Hollywood and becomes a star, and that actually could happen to you. And I was so consumed with music. I still am, but I mean, back then, I just had this reservoir of energy. And I wanted to get into the music business so bad. And I was so blessed to have these people pop into my life that had the ability to offer me, projects to do and to teach me the ropes. And the Daltons did that. They taught me how to dress, how to act in a restaurant, how to record, how to not to screw around when you're in the studio. They were lifesavers. Lois Dalton is still alive, and she is my dearest friend. We're still in constant touch, and but it was amazing to be at that age, to be surrounded by people who were much older than you, but they had been through a wealth of experiences.
Right. Integrity.
I mean, all I had to do was really sit back and watch and observe and learn. And I certainly had the people to show me that. So I was really, really lucky.
Well, speaking of lucky, you in 1973, you were actually the last artist to sign to Apple Records, weren't you? How did that come up?
Is that a good thing to say? I mean, I think it is. I hate to say I put the label down.
Yeah,
to have been signed to Apple is lucky.
Yeah.
It's part of history.
Well, I was on tour. I was on tour with Johnny Tillotson. And we were playing in England and in Birmingham, and with Del Shannon and Bobby V. And Johnny knew a guy named Tony King at Apple Records, and Tony was the manager, I guess, of I don't know what was the exact. I knew we had a big office, and anyway, John, I had this demo in my pocket of a song that I had written in L.A. that I had just started, and a basic track and a vocal. And Johnny said, "Well, why don't you play it for my friend Tony?" Because Tony used to do Johnny's publicity back when he had hits in the '60s, early '60s. So I said, "Yeah, right, Apple Records." I told Tillotson, and he says, "No," he says, "My friend Tony King is, right down. I'll call him up for you, And that was Johnny. He was always doing stuff like that. So he calls up Tony King, and then Johnny says to me, he says, "You got an appointment tomorrow at 10 o'clock, with Tony King." I went, "Are you kidding me?" He says, No. He said, "He's a great guy." I say, "I know, but that's Apple Records. I'm supposed to go to Apple Records at 10 o'clock. He says, "Yeah, it's all set up for you." I went, "Oh shit!" So I've got my tape, and at 10, I couldn't sleep that night, and the next morning I get up and I get a cab to take me into London, and there it is. There's the building, and so I go in the door, and I'm totally freaking out. I'm doing everything I can to kind of keep my cool, Right. And I go to the elevator. And there's pictures on the wall and stuff of the Beatles. The Beatles are here. The Beatles. Everywhere you look, there's just Beatles thrown in your face. And here I am. I kept thinking all the while that a security guard was going to come up to me and say, "Oh, it was Boland, not Beland. You'll have to leave right now." And I get to the elevator, and it takes me up to Tony's office upstairs. It opens up to Tony's office, which is also covered with Beatles stuff all over. And so I sat down with Tony, and he was really a warm, friendly, beautiful guy. Oh, he was great. So I go in and I sit down in the chair, and it kind of looked like It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart has to talk to what's his name, Mr. whatever. Anyway, I'm sitting in front of Tony, and Tony says, "Well, let's take a listen to what you have. Johnny's told me some good things," and he puts it on his thing. And he plays it real loud, and it sounded really good. And he says, "Well, let me take a listen to it. Let me play this for Ringo. He's coming in tonight. The other three guys are gone. But Ringo's coming in. Let me play it for him." I said, "Okay, fine. I just wanted to leave.
Yeah. And, before you embarrassed yourself.
I said, "That's fine, Tony. Bye." And so I go back to Birmingham. The next day, I get a call like at about 10 in the morning, and it's from Tony King again. And I'm in bed still. I went, "Hello?" And Tony says, "Yeah, John, this is Tony King." And I went, "Tony King? Oh, yeah, Tony." I thought he was going to say you could come back and pick up your tape now,
Right, yeah.
He said, "We listened to. I played the tape for Ringo. Really liked it. He'd like, we'd like to know if you'd like to join the Apple family."
Wow.
And I went, "Well, I don't know." And it didn't dawn on me. I was going like, I guess, yeah. What's it? Then I started waking up, going, "Oh," like totally freaking. Now they're asking me to join the label, So I said, "Yeah, But he said, "Well, can you come down in a couple of days and we'll work out the details and decide." I said, "Yeah, sure." So I hung up the phone and I ran down the hallway and banged on Tillotson's door, and I said, "I'm on Apple Records," and he freaked out. And that night we played in Birmingham, sold out show for Bobby and Johnny. And when Johnny, it came time for Johnny to introduce me to the crowd, Del Shannon and Bobby V came walking out with a big pitcher of beer, and they all sang this. They all sang some song. I can't remember what it was, but there was a moment I'll never forget, and I went down to Apple again. I had to call my manager up back in New York to tell him to cancel a deal offer they had on another label for me, because I wanted to sign with the Beatles. Well, my manager, you won't believe this, I'm not making this up. My manager at the time was Morton Downey Jr.
No.
Yeah. His name was Sean Downey at the time, but he was a friend of Tillotson's, and he financed my little session, and he got me a deal with Scepter Records. So I called him up and I said, Sean, I said, you're going to have to cancel the deal and get out here to London immediately because I'm with the Beatles label. And he says, I already got you this deal on Scepter. And I said, this is the Beatles. I'm signing with the Beatles, you know. Yeah. And and so Sean says, oh, God damn it. He says, oh, this is going to get me in a lot of trouble. He's real, you know, upset about it. But he flew out to London and we all went down for the signing. Oh. And I all I remember about it is that we signed the contract, got pictures taken, and then we went to a restaurant that the Beatles. It was a private restaurant where the women all were like gay '90s outfits. Would you know anything about that?
No, doesn't ring a bell.
Well, we went. They held a signing dinner for me, and we went to this plush restaurant, and the waitresses all had those things and. Yeah. Anyway, that was it. And then when I got back to America, I finished the album as an Apple session, you know. And when I finished, right after I had put the violins on, I got a telegram saying that Apple is shut down because of a lawsuit with what's his name, you know. And I didn't know what to do, but luckily Mort was able to. Salvage the Scepter Records deal.
My Lord, what a story.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to James Taylor. I went to Minneapolis and he was playing, and I know his sister Kate. So I was a guest of his for this concert. And we were in the dressing room at this auditorium.
Yeah, and, he was the first to sign, right?
Well, we were talking about that, and he said, this is ironic, isn't it? And I went, what? He said, I'm the guy. I'm the first guy to sign, and you're the last. I said, collectively, we've closed down Apple.
Yeah.
Well, it's all in these books of John's. This one is one of my favorite. And I go back to stories and reread this. I've probably read this book in
you're a sweetie
5 times over. It's just absolutely, it's rock and roll from. Literally the best seat in the house. I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. It's just been fabulous.
You know, it's such a treat to see you guys again for one.
Yeah.
Likewise.
After all this time. Yeah.
So you can go and you can go to John's Wikipedia page is going all the way across the bottom there. You will be blown away. There's 50 more things. We'll have to have you back on when the new book comes out because there's 50 more things.
I'm on Facebook too, by the way, if you want to pop in and say hi. And give me a picture. Eaten the night before, and then it'll be great.
And so a lot of our regular viewers will know that our special guests get a limerick here from the Limerick Lady. And if you're sitting comfortably, we shall read you yours. Are you ready?
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, hold on. And
1, 2, 3.
John Beland with 6-string in hand, from country to rock he'd command. Linda, Garth, Kris, and Dolly. He would play, and by golly, they'd give him a show that was grand.
Ta-da!
Cheers. Encore.
Absolutely fabulous. Thanks.
Thank you, honey.
The TeaFlix is brought to you by Mrs. McCartney's Teas. So if you're freezing your bum off somewhere in America, head over to the website and get some nice hot tea, and head over to Amazon and get both of John's books. They're both highly recommended. And he's got shout outs on the back here from the Bellamy Brothers, Dolly Parton, Garth Brooks, Kris Kristofferson, Linda Ronstadt. If you're any kind of a fan of music, these are absolute must-have books. So thanks again, John, for
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Angie.
Okay, John, that was lovely.
We will see you kids all of a sudden.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.